So, I was giving a lecture, and it was really interesting because I had people who didn't believe or didn't want to accept what I was offering, right? And probably one of my toughest groups, the best compliment that I got from that group was when someone said, "You're not wrong, but I don't agree with you." Right now, I could buy it. I could take that. I appreciated their honesty and their ability to see how what I was saying had some relevance, right? But sometimes I'm doing a lecture, I'm doing a workshop, I'm facilitating a session, and there are people in the room whose primary objective is to derail what I'm talking about, because what I'm talking about is causing them to have to think differently about their own lives, and then that starts a whole set of dominoes that people don't want to deal with. And so oftentimes they just attack the presenter, right? They say, "It's you're bringing this up, so it's your I'm doing this." And so what I've recognized is that there are a lot of ways in which we can communicate, and some of those aren't with the best of intentions, right? And so I was doing a session earlier, and someone was talking about leaders and leadership, and how do you talk to them, and what do you do, and all this kind of stuff. And so what I'd like to offer, particularly if we're talking to folks with positional power or greater influence than we have, how do we help correct their behaviors? How do we show them? How do we hold up a mirror to them in a way that they can see a behavior or a comment or a mindset that they have that's not productive, or that is not in line with what they espouse as their intentions, right? So how do we help those folks? Well, one of the ways that we can help them is to approach them with humility. With humility. So what does that mean? Well, one of the things it means is that we're all looking for safety, significance, and belonging. That as a person who's going to communicate, I recognize that the person I'm going to communicate with is seeking, or was seeking, with their behavior, their comment, or their mindset, safety, significance, and belonging. And that I myself am also looking for safety, significance, and belonging, which then means we're both after the same things, but we've come to a point where our methods may be somewhat problematic, or I see someone's method as problematic. And so take a step back, I look at the situation for what it is, and I try to honor the fact that they're looking for safety, significance, and belonging, and find those common grounds. To do that, one must have a sense of humility. Humility is this concept that not only do I that I do the right thing, but the intentions of why I'm doing things are important, right? So how we talk to people is extremely important, and using this tool of humility is important. So humility consists basically of three parts, right? So recognizing your own ego, right? So we all have a ego and an id. We have these mindsets that like help create and form our identity, and as that identity kind of marches through the world, it is the magnet that kind of holds us together, or the projection of what is holding us together, right? And so recognizing that I have an ego, and secondly recognizing that the other person has an ego. When I'm able to do that, I'm able to actually ask myself if I can move into part two. So the first part is recognizing the role that ego plays, right? I have an ego and the other person has an ego. The second is really asking, how can I approach this person in a way that allows them to save face? Right? Save face. So this idea of face is that I don't want to put people in a position where they might be embarrassed, particularly if I recognize that my sharing, my engagement around a particular issue may be embarrassing for them. So I figure out how to allow them to save face, which a way to do that is to really ask yourself, what is the difference between being right and being effective, right? And so oftentimes people, we side on the rationale of wanting to be right, right? And I want you to think about an intimate partner relationship that you've had. Have there been times that you've had to sacrifice being right to be effective? And have there been other times when you said, you know what, no matter what happens, I'm going to be right on this particular issue or point? And how did that turn out, right? So the first is to recognize the role that ego plays. The second is to ask yourself, how do I help this person save face? How do I be effective over being right? Right? And then third is, how do I engage this person in questioning their own behaviors, thoughts, or attitudes, right? So I can't tell someone what to do. All I can do is give them information, right? And so part of how I do that is by asking questions. And so oftentimes what I'll do is really have people reflect on what, so what, and now what. And so, you know, what happened there? I was confused as to, you know, why you might use that kind of terminology with this group. And so I'm not you know, you can you share your intentions, and then the individual shares their intentions, and then I follow up with, so this is how that was taken. So, you know, so what do you think that might mean for the group in question or in mind, right? Or lastly, now what? So yeah, so I gave you this feedback. We kind of talked about this piece, and so now, you know, I give it to you to kind of think about. So that's one way to kind of deal with those situations. Another thing to consider is why one would want to approach someone who's had some behavior that is problematic. Right. So how or why? So what are your motives for doing that? Right. So what are your intentions for doing that? Because intentions do matter, particularly as it relates to impact. Right. So we know that intentions can't be measured. Right. We know that intentions don't come on a scale, and we can't see intentions because they're nuanced. We also know that impact is what we're being held accountable for and to. So we have to recognize the balance between our impact and our intentions. And when those things are not in alignment, then there is a need for some growth and development. So as one is talking to a leader or talking to someone with a positional authority, one might ask oneself before you go to speak to that leader or their colleague, if you don't feel comfortable going directly to them, what is the intention? So if I'm looking to make a point, that might not be the best of intentions, right? If I'm looking to investigate and learn from this person's perspective, so I can get a better sense of why or how they came to have that behavior, that thought process, or to say those things, that may be one of those so-called good intentions, right? So how we ask questions and what we're after in asking those questions is extremely important. I recall more recently, I had an encounter with my daughter. She's 5 years old, and she was doing something that was that I had told her to stop doing, right? And so she's 5. So I repeat to her. I asked her this question. I said, "What are you doing?" And her response was somewhat alarming to me. because I'm old school, right? So my parent, I'm a result of old school. My parents are old school. I don't know what the address is of that. I don't know if they got a diploma or not. But at any rate, so I'm old school, and her response to me was that she was telling me exactly what she was doing. I started to laugh after that, right? Because my question really wasn't what was she doing? My question was, why haven't you stopped doing what I asked you to do? But being 5 years old, she didn't have the context. She didn't recognize the nuance of either the irony or sarcasm in my voice. She didn't recognize the tone of my voice and the attitude I was presenting as I was giving that information. And so she just repeated back to me what I was doing. And so when we talk with folks and we're asking them to think about their behavior or change their behavior, we have to be crystal clear about what our motives are. What is it that we're actually asking people to do? And we have to be willing to ask them in a way that they understand. Being effective over being right. This is Andre Koen. Thank you so much for your time.